Imagine this for a second. The concert is over. The lights are slowly dimming. Thousands of fans are still screaming, trying to hold on to the final moments of an unforgettable night. Most people are already looking at their phones, sharing videos and photos from the show. But somewhere inside the stadium, something happens that almost nobody notices. No giant screen captures it. No official camera focuses on it. And yet, for the people who witnessed it, it became one of the most touching moments of the entire Munich concert. Because according to stories shared by fans who were there, Jimin did something so simple, so human, and so unexpected that it left many armies emotional. Hey guys, Pop Signal family, if you've been following BTS's European tour, then you already know that Munich became one of those cities that created memories fans will never forget. The energy was incredible. The crowd was loud from beginning to end. Every member had their own shining moments, and social media exploded with clips from the concerts almost immediately. People talked about the performances, the interactions between members, the emotional speeches, and even the funny moments that quickly became memes online. But sometimes the moments that stay in people's hearts the longest are not the ones happening under the spotlight. As fans started posting about their experiences after the concert, a different kind of story slowly began spreading through the fandom. It wasn't about choreography. It wasn't about vocals. And it wasn't about a surprise stage moment. Instead, several fans claimed that Jimin appeared to notice an army who needed assistance in the stadium area after the concert was ending. According to these fan accounts, Jimin's attention seemed to shift away from the usual post-concert excitement as he became aware that someone in the crowd was not completely okay. Now, before we continue, it's important to say something very clearly. Because this story wasn't captured by official cameras and there has been no formal statement from BTS or their team. Much of what the fandom is discussing comes from fan testimonies and personal accounts shared online. Details may vary depending on who tells the story. Some descriptions are brief, while others add different perspectives. But despite these differences, one thing remained surprisingly consistent in almost every account. People were touched because they felt they witnessed another example of Jimin's caring personality. At first, the story didn't attract much attention. After all, everyone was still posting concert videos. Fans were busy talking about favorite performances and emotional moments from the stage. The timeline was moving incredibly fast. New photos and clips appeared every minute. In that flood of content, a small story about something happening after the concert could have easily disappeared. But then something unexpected happened. People who had been inside the stadium started noticing similar posts from different accounts. A few fans mentioned seeing Jimin looking concerned. Others said they saw him paying attention to something happening near the audience area. Some claimed he appeared to make sure help was being given. Again, the exact details remain difficult to verify completely. However, the emotional reaction from those who shared these stories was impossible to ignore. And this is where everything became even more interesting. Because if you followed Jimin for years, this kind of reaction from fans probably doesn't surprise you. Most fans didn't notice this detail at first, but there is a reason why stories like this spread so quickly whenever they involve Jimin. Throughout his career, he has developed a reputation among ARMY for being incredibly attentive to people around him. It's something that fans have talked about for years. They often describe him as someone who notices little things that others might miss. Think about all the moments that have built this image over time. There have been countless occasions when Jimin appeared concerned about his members' well-being. Fans have seen him quietly checking on someone who seemed tired. They have noticed him helping during interviews when another member looked uncomfortable. They have watched him pay attention to staff members and acknowledge people who are often outside the camera's focus. These moments are usually not grand gestures designed to become headlines. In fact, many of them happen so quickly that they could easily be missed. And perhaps that's exactly why people remember them. Because in an industry where every second can become content, fans often feel that the most genuine moments are the ones that happen naturally, without planning. As the Munich story continued spreading, more and more armies started sharing their reactions. Some said reading the accounts made them emotional. Others explained that even if every detail couldn't be confirmed with absolute certainty, they were moved by the possibility that Jimin once again showed concern for someone in need. One comment from a fan summed up the mood perfectly. The fan said that what makes Jimin special isn't simply his talent, his performances, or his global fame. It's the fact that he often seems to remember that there are human beings behind the screaming crowds and glowing light sticks. And honestly, that idea resonated with many people. Because think about the scale of a BTS concert. You have tens of thousands of fans inside a massive stadium. There are lights everywhere. The music is loud. Security staff are coordinating exits. Cameras are moving. The members are saying goodbye while trying to wave to as many fans as possible. The atmosphere is overwhelming. In a moment like that, it would be incredibly easy to become focused only on finishing the event and moving backstage. But according to the stories circulating among fans, Jimin's attention may have gone somewhere else entirely. And that's the detail that left so many people emotional. Because whether someone is one of the biggest stars on the planet or not, the act of noticing another person's situation and caring enough to pay attention is something people deeply appreciate. However, that's not the whole story. Because as fans discussed this incident online, another conversation started to emerge. People began asking a bigger question. Why do moments involving Jimin's kindness always seem to affect fans so deeply? At first glance, it sounds like a simple question. But the answer might actually reveal something important about the relationship between idols and their fandoms. K-pop is often associated with incredible performances, stunning visuals, and carefully prepared stages. Fans admire their favorite artists for their talent and dedication. But there is another element that creates long-lasting emotional connections. It's humanity. Fans remember the times when an idol laughs unexpectedly. They remember when an artist becomes emotional during a speech. They remember when someone comforts another member. And they especially remember moments when an idol appears to genuinely care about the people around them. That's why stories like the one from Munich become bigger than a single incident. For many armies, these moments feel like reminders that behind the global superstar image is someone who still notices small things. And perhaps that explains why the conversation surrounding Munich didn't disappear after a few hours. Instead, it kept growing. Some fans started sharing older memories of Jimin's kindness. Others posted compilations of moments when he appeared attentive toward fans or people around him. The discussion slowly transformed from a conversation about one specific incident into something much larger. It became a reflection on how people perceive Jimin as a person. And then another unexpected detail appeared. Several fans who had attended the Munich concerts began saying that the atmosphere throughout the entire event already felt unusually emotional. Maybe it was because Munich marked the end of an important stop in BTS's European schedule. Maybe it was because everyone knew these nights would become memories they would treasure forever. Or perhaps it was because there was a feeling in the air that something meaningful was happening beyond the performances themselves. Whatever the reason, fans described the concerts as emotionally intense from beginning to end. So when stories of Jimin's reported actions after the concert began spreading, many people felt that it somehow matched the emotions of those nights perfectly. It felt consistent with the mood they had already experienced. And this is where things became even more fascinating, because some fans started discussing an idea that goes far beyond one concert, one city, or one viral moment. They talked about how small actions can sometimes create bigger memories than huge performances. After all, years from now, people will remember the songs. They will remember the set lists. They will remember the photos. But some fans might also remember hearing a story about an artist who, according to witnesses, paused long enough to pay attention to someone who may have needed help. And for those fans, that memory carries a different kind of value. Because it's not about spectacle. It's about compassion. As the hours passed and more discussions appeared online, one thing became increasingly clear. Whether people were commenting from South Korea, Europe, North America, South America, or Southeast Asia, the emotional response was remarkably similar. They were moved. Not because of something dramatic. Not because of something designed to go viral. But because simple acts of kindness often have a way of reminding people why they connected with an artist in the first place. And then another question quietly began appearing throughout the fandom. If this story had never been shared by the fans who were there, would anyone have ever known about it at all? That question stayed in the minds of a lot of armies. If nobody had posted about it, if those few fans inside the stadium had simply gone home and kept the memory to themselves, then this entire moment might have disappeared into the night without anyone outside Munich ever hearing about it. There would have been no discussion, no emotional reactions online, and no reminder of why so many people describe Jimin as someone who pays attention to the little things. And honestly, that's what made the story feel even more special to many fans. Because in today's world, almost everything is recorded. Every angle of a concert is captured by someone's phone. Every interaction seems to end up online within seconds. Fans can replay moments again and again, analyzing every smile and every expression. But this was different. This was one of those rare moments that existed almost entirely through human memories. People weren't discussing a high-definition video clip. They were sharing experiences. They were telling each other what they saw, what they felt, and why the moment stayed with them after leaving the stadium. And strangely enough, that made it feel even more personal. Because memories work differently than videos. A video can show exactly what happened, but memories often tell us why something mattered. As fans continued sharing their thoughts, one comment started receiving a lot of attention. A fan wrote that one reason they admire Jimin is because he seems to understand that a concert isn't only about performing songs. It's also about creating a space where people feel seen, appreciated, and cared for. Of course, nobody can know exactly what was going through Jimin's mind in that moment in Munich. Any attempt to describe his thoughts would simply be speculation. But the emotional reactions from fans reveal something meaningful about how people have come to view him over the years. For many armies, Jimin has become someone associated not only with incredible performances, but also with warmth. And when fans feel warmth from an artist, they remember it. Sometimes even more than they remember specific performances. Think about it. Ask longtime fans why they love their favorite idols, and many of them don't immediately mention songs or awards. Instead, they often tell stories. Stories about an interview. Stories about a small interaction. Stories about something an artist said years ago. Stories about moments that made them feel comforted. People remember feelings. And perhaps that's why this Munich story resonated so strongly. Because even though details remain limited and fan accounts should be treated as personal observations rather than official confirmation, the story reminded many people of a feeling they already associated with Jimin. The feeling of kindness. Then something even more interesting happened. The conversation slowly shifted away from whether every single detail could be verified and moved towards something entirely different. People started talking about why kindness matters so much in fandoms. At first, this may sound like an overly simple topic, but actually, it's one of the reasons K-pop communities become so emotionally connected. For many fans, idols arrive in their lives during important moments. Some discover BTS while going through difficult periods. Others find comfort during stressful times at school or work. Some make friendships because they meet other fans. Some learn confidence. Some find inspiration. Music is often the beginning. But human connection is what keeps people staying for years. That's why stories involving empathy and compassion spread so quickly. Because fans don't just see an incident. They see values. They see reminders of why they became emotionally invested in someone in the first place. And this became increasingly obvious as more armies reflected on the Munich story. Many people weren't talking about fame. They weren't talking about records. They weren't discussing chart positions. Instead, they were talking about humanity. And then another unexpected detail emerged. Several fans who attended the concert started sharing how emotional the end of Munich Day 2 already felt even before these stories began circulating. They described the final moments of the concert almost like the ending of a movie. The members were saying goodbye. Fans were trying to memorize every second. Some people were already crying. Others kept waving their army bombs long after the performances ended. There was a sense that nobody wanted the night to end. Maybe you've experienced something similar. Sometimes a concert isn't just entertainment. Sometimes it becomes a memory that people carry for years. And Munich seemed to become exactly that kind of night. So when stories later appeared suggesting that Jimin had paid attention to a fan who needed help, it somehow blended naturally into the emotions people were already feeling. It wasn't simply another event. It became part of the memory of Munich itself. And perhaps that's why so many people continued discussing it. Because every legendary concert has moments that never appear on official highlight videos. Moments that fans tell each other years later. Moments that become almost mythical within fandom communities. You know, the kind of stories people start with by saying, "I was there." And maybe this was becoming one of those moments. Not because it was dramatic. Not because it was impossible. But because it felt deeply human. Then another thought began appearing in fan discussions. What must it feel like to be in that stadium and witness something like this firsthand? Imagine standing among thousands of people. The concert has ended. Everyone is preparing to leave. Then you notice your favorite artist paying attention to someone who might need assistance. Even if the moment lasts only seconds, would you forget it? Most fans said probably not, because moments like that tend to stay in people's memories. Not due to their scale, but because they reveal character. And when fans feel they have seen an artist's genuine character, even briefly, the memory becomes meaningful. This is also why so many armies became protective when discussing the story. Many reminded others not to exaggerate details or turn speculation into confirmed facts. People wanted to respect both Jimin and the fan involved. Interestingly, this response revealed something beautiful about the fandom itself. The conversation wasn't centered around creating drama. Instead, many fans simply wanted to appreciate the possibility of a kind gesture while remaining respectful about information that couldn't be fully verified. That balance made the discussion feel mature and sincere. And somehow it made the story even more touching. Because perhaps the most meaningful moments are the ones that don't need to become sensational headlines. Sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes they're brief. Sometimes only a few people witness them. Yet somehow they travel across countries and languages because they carry emotions that people immediately understand. Care, concern, empathy, compassion. These are things that don't require translation. And this is where everything became even more emotional. As the night in Munich turned into mourning in other parts of the world, thousands of armies who had not attended the concert began waking up and reading about what had happened. They saw photos from the concert. They watched performance clips. They laughed at funny moments from the stage. And then they discovered this story. For many of them, it became the final piece of the Munich experience. The performances were spectacular. The atmosphere was unforgettable. The memories were beautiful. And according to fan accounts, somewhere at the end of it all, there may have been one quiet moment that reminded everyone of something incredibly simple. That even in a stadium filled with tens of thousands of people, a small act of attention can leave one of the biggest impressions of the entire night. And perhaps the most remarkable thing of all is this. The concert ended. The lights went out. The stage was left behind. But somehow, the story people kept carrying with them wasn't only about what Jimin did under the spotlight. It was about what may have happened after almost everyone thought the night was already over. And maybe that's the reason this story refused to disappear. Usually, after a major BTS concert, the fandom moves quickly. New clips appear, fan cams start trending, and attention shifts to the next city on the tour schedule. But with Munich, something felt slightly different. Even as fans began posting their favorite performances and talking about the next stop on BTS's journey, this quiet story kept resurfacing in conversations. People kept mentioning it not because they wanted to prove anything, but because it made them pause and think. In many ways, it reminded fans of an important reality that sometimes gets lost amid the excitement of global tours and sold-out stadiums. Idols perform in front of massive crowds, travel constantly, and live under enormous pressure. Yet moments like this suggest that despite everything happening around them, there can still be room for simple human concern. For many armies, that's incredibly meaningful. One fan wrote something that resonated with thousands of people. They said that whenever stories like this emerge, they are reminded that kindness often happens in silence. It doesn't need dramatic music or giant screens. It doesn't require headlines. Sometimes the most beautiful things happen when almost nobody is paying attention. And honestly, that thought seemed to capture exactly why so many people were emotional. Because let's be real, everyone watching BTS knows that Jimin is an extraordinary performer. We have seen him command enormous stages and captivate entire stadiums with his presence. We've watched him deliver performances that become unforgettable moments in K-pop history. But stories like the one from Munich seem to reveal another side that fans appreciate just as much. It's the side that feels approachable. The side that reminds people that beneath the superstar image is someone who still notices moments around him. As discussions continued, fans from different countries began sharing their own memories of experiencing Jimin's warmth over the years. Some remembered interactions at concerts. Others recalled messages that comforted them during difficult times. Some talked about old interviews and small moments that left lasting impressions. Reading these comments almost felt like opening a giant scrapbook created by the fandom itself. And perhaps that became the unexpected gift of this entire story. It encouraged people to reflect. Instead of focusing only on what happened in Munich, fans started thinking about all the reasons they admire BTS and Jimin in the first place. The conversation transformed into something bigger than one incident. It became an appreciation of qualities that cannot be measured by awards or chart numbers. Compassion, empathy, thoughtfulness. These things don't appear on statistics pages. Yet they often become the reasons people remain connected to artists for many years. And maybe that's what makes fandom experiences so special. Sometimes fans fall in love with the music first. Then they stay because of the people behind the music. As the hours passed, another interesting pattern became clear. Even fans who admitted they couldn't verify every detail of the Munich story still felt touched by it. Not because they were trying to create a perfect image of anyone, but because the story reminded them of values they believe matter. Kindness matters. Paying attention matters. Helping others matters. Those ideas are universal. And perhaps that explains why the reactions spread so quickly across social media. Because at its heart, this isn't really a story about a celebrity. It's a story about humanity. And stories about humanity tend to stay with us. If you think about it, years from now, Munich Day 2 will probably be remembered for many reasons. People will remember the incredible energy inside the stadium. They'll remember the excitement, the emotions, and the joy of seeing BTS together on stage. They'll remember the laughter, the singing, and the feeling of not wanting the night to end. But for some people, Munich may also be remembered for something quieter. A story, a moment, a reminder that even after the music stopped, there was still something meaningful left to take home. And maybe that's the beauty of concerts. Sometimes the performances are what bring us together, but it's the human moments that stay with us afterward. As armies continue looking forward to the next stops of the tour, there is also something comforting about knowing that every city creates memories of its own. No two nights are ever exactly the same. Every concert develops its own personality, its own emotions, and its own stories that fans carry long after the stage lights go dark. Munich gave fans incredible performances. It gave them unforgettable memories. And according to the stories shared by those who were there, it may have also given them one gentle reminder that kindness can appear in unexpected places and unexpected moments. Perhaps that's why so many fans felt emotional reading about it. Because in a world that moves incredibly fast, where news changes every minute and trends come and go almost instantly, a simple story about caring for another person still has the power to stop people in their tracks. It reminds us to pay attention. It reminds us to appreciate small gestures. And maybe most importantly, it reminds us that sometimes the moments that aren't captured by cameras become the ones that touch our hearts the deepest. At the end of the day, none of us were standing inside Jimin's mind that night. We can't know every detail or every thought that crossed his mind. But what we do know is this. A simple story from Munich inspired thousands of people around the world to talk about kindness, empathy, and human connection. That's not something that happens every day. And perhaps that's why this moment feels so special. Because even after the concert ended and the stadium slowly emptied, the conversation that remained wasn't only about songs or performances. It was about being reminded of something beautifully simple, that small actions can leave enormous impressions. For many armies, that's exactly why they walked away from this story feeling warm inside. Because sometimes the brightest moments don't happen under the spotlight. Sometimes they happen quietly, when almost nobody is looking. And somehow, those moments end up shining the longest. So, Pop Signal family, what do you think about this story from Munich? Do you believe that small acts of kindness can become the most memorable part of a concert experience? And have there been moments involving BTS or Jimin that touched you in a similar way? If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a like because it really helps the channel. Subscribe to Pop Signal and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the latest updates, stories, and unforgettable moments from the world of K-pop and BTS. And most importantly, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below and tell us which Jimin moment has stayed in your heart the longest. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today, Pop Signal family. Until our next story, take care of yourselves, keep supporting the artists you love, and never underestimate the power of one small act of kindness. We'll see you again very soon in the next Pop Signal video.